It's a special edition of Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb. You know, our guest on today's program calls himself more able than most able-bodied people. Bryan Anderson is an actor, he's an author, he's an adrenaline junkie, a motivational speaker, he's a spokesperson for USA Cares, and oh yes, by the way, he's a triple amputee. But don't call him a victim because that word is not in his vocabulary. Bryan Anderson joins us. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And don't call you a hero either. You don't like to be called a hero. You know, from what I've read about you, you always thought you were a gymnast in high school and you always thought that you'd do extraordinary things. But life and fate sometimes intervene, don't they? And you're doing extraordinary things, but the course you're taking is a little bit different. So share with us the fact how in October of 2005, that course kind of changed when you were on your second tour of duty in Iraq. You were in a Humvee and you encountered an I.E.D, an improvised explosive device that took your legs and your arm. Share that with us, if you will.
Well, when you're in Iraq and you're in combat, you think of coming home either dead or alive. You don't think about coming home halfway. And I never thought of that either. The plans that I had for my life was to go get out of the Army, go back to American Airlines, and possibly try to get into stunt work somehow. That's what I wanted to do. Well, then on October 23rd of 2005, I got blown up. And I woke up at Walter Reed 7 days later, and I didn't know anything, really. I'm just waking up, I'm figuring out all this stuff again, I'm remembering what had happened, and now I'm thinking, all right, well, now what? And I didn't know. It was just unknown. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how I was going to handle anything.
But did you, I mean, were you aware enough? Take us back to that day, because from the stories I've heard, and I've seen you do interviews before.
Or you want me to talk about the...
Sure, because there's kind of that moment when, you know, are you even in the moment enough? And apparently you were, to look down and kind of assess things.
Oh yeah, I was very aware of everything that had happened. Right before the explosion went off, I had both of my hands on the bottom of the steering wheel, my left leg curled up underneath my right leg, and my right leg down driving. And how we cope with everything in Iraq is we make fun of everything. Well, me and Kenny, the guy that was sitting next to me, we were making fun of everything. We were laughing, we were having a good time. And right before the explosion went off, I took my hand off the steering wheel, which is technically why I still have my hands. This is the bad part. I reached into my pocket to grab a cigarette. And I pulled it out, and as I went to go light the cigarette, it was almost as if it happened at the exact same time, or I triggered it. And the next thing that I saw was smoke and fire coming through the door. And then it was just pitch black. And it wasn't because I was knocked out, it was because there was so much smoke inside the truck you couldn't see anything. I didn't know anything was wrong with me. My first reaction is to look to my right and be like, hey, are you guys all right? We just got hit. And I didn't hear anything. And that scared the crap out of me. I thought they were dead.
Were they dead?
No,
Did you lose? Okay.
The reason I didn't hear anything was because they jumped out of the vehicle immediately. The gunner had the Forrest Gump wound, had shrapnel in his butt, and Kenny had shrapnel in his wrist and in his hip. But he says my hand hit him in the face, and that told him to get out. And so he got out, ran to the truck in front of us, grabbed the driver, Michael Waite, and looked back and said, Anderson's not out yet, let's go get him. And then they ran back, busted the bolts off the door, and pulled me out. Now, while I was inside, once I didn't hear anything, I tried looking harder, and I saw green, and I was like, why am I seeing green? And I relaxed, and my head dropped backwards. Then I went, whoa, why did my head fall backwards? And then I realized I was on my back. What had happened was, when the explosion went off, it cut my legs and my hand off instantly. My legs were laying in the floorboard, my hand was in the passenger seat, and it spun me sideways. And I was laying on my back, and when I looked to my right, I was looking at the back of my seat, which was green. So then once I realized that I was on my back, I told myself, all right, get out. I don't know what I did to try to get out, but after a few seconds, I knew I couldn't get out. And I probably would have freaked out if it weren't for the fact that I heard my friends busting the bolts off the door. So that I knew, right, I knew there were people alive, and I knew somebody was coming to get me.
The hand that you say hit your friend that got him out of the, was it the detached hand?
It
Or
was my left
It
hand.
was your left hand.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Imagine.
Oh, and he's a Superman. He's got a 360 hand. We're going to talk more
Imagine
about that.
this flying across and hitting him in the face, landing in his lap.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, that would...
That'd be a little wake-up call.
Yeah.
A little bit of a wake-up call. But so there you are. This is happening. This is done. You wake up in the
Well,
hospital.
I didn't pass out yet.
Okay.
They pulled me out, and I got a fresh breath of air, and that revived me a lot more. And that's when I started trying to figure out if we were still being attacked or not. Because I'm like, do I need to be doing something? What's going on? Are we being shot at? Where's my weapon? And then they got me onto the sidewalk in Baghdad, and I was watching. And all I could see was my friends running back and forth from me to the truck. And they all looked like they'd just seen a ghost, like something was wrong.
You could tell by their
I could
faces.
tell.
Yeah.
I still didn't know what was wrong with me. I had no idea. All I knew was I had to be pulled out of the vehicle. Well, now I get on the sidewalk, and I'm looking around. I figure out we're not being attacked, and the flies in Iraq are nasty. So they were flying around my face, and I went to go wipe my face, and the first thing that I noticed was my fingertip was gone. And it was like, and my whole hand kind of looked messed up, but I was like...
But you still saw your other fingers.
Yeah.
And your thumb. Yeah.
And I was like, all right. I look up at them, and I look back at that, and I'm like, yeah, they're not freaking out about that. And I turned my hand over, and where that tattoo is, this whole chunk, this whole piece was missing. I could see into my hand, and it was kind of gross. And I even thought to myself, I was like, oh, that's gross.
So you had the presence of mind to acknowledge that. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I was looking at that, a fly landed in my left eye, and I went to go wipe with my left hand, and I just whiffed. And I'm like, whoa. I said other words, but...
Hand's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw my sleeve hanging there and the blood dripping, and I'm just like, crap. And then I looked up at them again, and I looked back at that, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that really sucks, but they're not going to be freaking out that much about
You knew there was something bigger going on.
And that's when I looked down, and as I tried to look down, they tried to force my head back down to the ground.
So you wouldn't see.
But I saw what had happened, and my thoughts were, F this, F that. That did not just happen.
My legs are gone.
Wow. And then it's kind of like I got this feeling like, holy crap, my mom's going to kill me.
Why your mother? What's that all about?
Because it's like, I did something wrong. Or, you know, like, oh, I got in trouble. You know, I don't know. That's just how I felt.
And then your life becomes this before the accident, after the accident. Is that your timeline, or that doesn't even play in?
It doesn't even play in.
I'm
Not
happy
really.
to hear that.
Well, then I'm laying there, and I'm looking at my friends again, and they're freaking out even more, and I felt like I needed to say something. And that's when I reached up, when I went, oh, am I allowed to swear? Like the S word?
Within reason, it is public television. A little discretion.
So I went, holy, do you ever think I'll get again? And he just started laughing.
Sense of humor.
And he got right
always
back
that
on
sense
track.
of humor.
And he came up to me 2 months after the fact, and he was like, you know, when you said that, it made me realize that you were still in there, and it wasn't just a lifeless body. And I was like, thank you, you know, that you saved my life.
Well, and I think as we go throughout this program, you're going to find that that sense of humor is what carries you through in a lot of ways. So off to Walter Reed and recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, long recovery.
I laid there for 12 minutes. I got on the helicopter. I knew I was only a couple minutes away from the Baghdad ER. And when I closed my eyes, it literally felt like 3 seconds until I opened them again. And I was expecting to wake up at the Baghdad ER to some doctor poking and prodding me saying, hey, can you feel that? Does that hurt? I don't know, something or another. But I didn't. I woke up and my mom was there. And I'm like, Mom.
Are you mad at me?
Well, no, I was like,
my
Mom,
mom's going to kill me.
Whoa, what are you doing here? Because I'm thinking some idiot brought my mom to Iraq. And I'm like, this is not cool. And she goes, no, you had an accident. It's 7 days later, and you're at Walter Reed in Washington, D.C. And I was like, wow. Oh, wow. And I still had to piece things back together. I didn't remember everything right at once, but within 6 months, I pretty much remembered everything.
Together.
Yeah.
How many surgeries? How long in the hospital?
Plus 40. I don't
plus
know.
40.
Or
yeah.
40 plus.
Are we done? Are we done with the surgeries?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you're not going to be anymore.
My last surgery was probably in June of '06. And I left Walter Reed in December, or November, December. Left Walter Reed in November, discharged from the Army in December.
We've got a lot more to talk about. We're gonna take a short break, but when we come back, we want to find out, you know, your extraordinary life. You wanted to be a stunt person. You've done a lot of acting. You've been in the movie The Wrestler, Batman Returns, lots and lots of TV shows. And so your life really did take a turn. And we want to hear more about that. And we'll be back with Bryan Anderson when Outlook continues right after this. Stay with us. Outlook continues. We have a special edition for you as we bring you Bryan Anderson. He's an author, an actor. He's one of your, and I'll ask you this, what you think is your most important job, because you have so many, I don't know how you keep track, but you're a spokesperson for USA Cares. In the first segment of the show, you shared with us the story of how you lost both your legs and one of your arms, but you have not let that stop. You are a true adrenaline junkie. Matter of fact, as we're taping this program, you just came from zip lining at an area zip line facility. Yesterday, you were shooting your shotgun. So, you know, you really haven't let that stop you. Take us back to the recovery, because that's where we ended up. And you know, your mom's there, you're in Walter Reed, because this was a turning point, because you met somebody who kind of changed your life in a way. And that would be the actor, Gary Sinise, and which is ironic, because what part did he play in the movie Forrest Gump?
Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah, so share that story. That's a cool story.
Well, when I was in therapy, I was just focused on my therapy, and I wanted to go home. They said the average stay of a soldier was 18 to 36 months, and I only had 6 months left in the Army, so I was like, I want to go home. Let me figure out how to do that. So I was only there 13 months, which was good. But right when I got there, the therapist got me out of bed, and I didn't think I was ready, but they knew I was, and it really showed me that I was ready. So
now, do you wear prosthetic legs?
I do, not always, not a lot actually, only when I feel like it, because they're a pain. They're a pain.
They hurt, or they're just
They
uncomfortable?
hurt. They're less efficient for me. I can do so much more, move a lot faster in a chair than I can on legs. And I look all stiff when I'm on legs, and I don't like to be stiff.
Okay.
But so I got down to it, and when I was learning how to walk on my legs, I was walking around the PT clinic. Well, at Walter Reed, there's always peer visitors or celebrity visitors. They do their deeds, and I was never into that. It didn't matter to me. I was just there to do my thing. And I knew somebody had walked in. I didn't pay attention who, didn't care who. They had a group of people with them and all that. And as I'm walking around the room, I'm starting to like go through the crowd to keep going in my circle, and I tripped or hit somebody's foot and fell forward, and I fell into somebody, and I put both my hands on their chest, and like a lot of weight too, and he stood there like strong, and I looked up, and it was Gary Sinise, and I'm like, holy crap, Gary Sinise.
Hey!
And he's like, holy crap, the real Lieutenant Dan. And I was just like, no, 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 no. You will always be Lieutenant Dan. And from that moment on, we sat down and we talked for like 10, 15, 20 minutes. And it wasn't about, hey, how you doing? I'm sorry this happened to you. Are you doing okay? No, it was more like, what's up? How you doing? You know, and we just kind of BS'd. I asked him questions about CSI.
Well, and you
acting.
come from the Chicago area, and
yes,
he's
from
originally
Chicago
from Illinois.
too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's the only.
So you had that connection.
In with Steppenwolf Theater of Arts, and
he knew you wanted to be a stunt person, so he.
Well, not at the
had that.
time.
Oh, okay.
But throughout our encounters together, he knew that. But this was before anything. This is before I came out on the cover of Esquire. This is before everything that I ever done. I mean, I just was doing therapy. It was, yeah. And it was a good experience. And then he was gone, and that was it.
Done.
And then probably a few months or so later, I went out to one of the Fran O'Brien dinners that they have for soldiers on Friday nights. And he went to one of them, and we ran into each other again, and he was talking to me a little bit, and it was a good experience. And then I left Walter Reed, and I came out on the cover of Esquire magazine. And with that, opened up a lot of doors for me, because I said that I wanted to be a stuntman, actor, you know, and just kind of move on and do extraordinary things. Well, I started getting invited to different functions, and he would be there. So we would just run into each other. We started running into each other.
Weird things.
Right,
huh?
right.
Yeah.
And he also has a band, the Lieutenant Dan Band, and they're really good. They really are. They play for like 2.5 hours straight, and they're all good songs. And you could look at everybody up on stage, including Gary, and you could see how much fun, how much they enjoy doing
what
that.
they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you then were invited to play in this
I'm
band?
invited, well, not yet.
Okay.
But he started inviting me to every show that he did in Chicago. And I'd always go if I could, if I wasn't around, because he knew that I traveled a lot now too. Well, then I did the CSI New York thing, and that worked out really cool. It was the writer that saw me in Esquire and wrote me a part and then called me and asked me if I'd play it. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I spent 11 days out there with him and the cast of CSI. We had a great time. We really came closer there. And after that, kind of went back, did my thing, and we started doing this Soldiers Weekend in South Carolina, Beaufort, South Carolina, for the Independence Fund. And they started off by it being a Lieutenant Dan Band weekend. And the first time I went there, you know, I just went as a guest. And then the last year that I went there, I actually got to fly with his band, a chartered flight from Chicago to Savannah, to North Carolina, and did a show there too.
So you
and
were
then
like
back to
a
Chicago.
member of the band.
I
You were a
was.
big deal.
It was
Yeah.
awesome.
And you play the drums?
No,
Okay.
and then
But you were playing the drums in his band?
not then.
Oh, okay.
But then a week later, we were in New York for the Siller Foundation for the Tunnels to Tower run for the 9/11
Yeah.
memorial, and he played at the end of that 5K marathon the next morning. Well, the night before, we had dinner, fundraiser, met a lot of people. It was a great event. And I looked at Gary and I'm like, hey Gary, are you going to the stage for sound checks? Because they had sound checks that night at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
And he's like, no, I'm not going. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm going to go over there, because the rest of the band was there and I just spent the whole last week with them. So I was like, I'm going to go hang out. Well, while they were doing their sound checks, I'm sitting up on the stage, like right next to the drummer. It's a husband and wife, Danny and Beth. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, Danny, you're going to have to teach me how to play drums one day. And he's like, absolutely. And then Beth, his wife, does the percussions. And she's like, well, do you want to play with me tomorrow? You want to do a couple songs, play drums, or play percussions? I'm like,
Yeah. Is there anything that you've ever said no that you won't do?
no.
No?
That's my thing, is that I take every opportunity that I possibly can. And it opens up so many doors. I mean, there's no reason to be afraid of anything or to be shy, or I don't know.
Is it
It's just-
fear? It's not really shyness, it's fear.
I think
isn't
it's
it?
more fear, yeah,
More.
yeah. But so then that next morning, I got up on stage with them and I played drums with them, and it was a lot harder than it looked. I'm like, am I in beat? Am I
So
following
see,
the demo?
even if it's hard, and even if you get out there, at least you've tried. So
Right.
that in and of itself, when you're doing your motivational speaking across the country, you know, people are looking at you going, wow, this guy is incredible. How do I get to that place called incredible?
I don't know. Good question. It's really kind of about finding your inner happiness and doing the things you love to do. You know that saying, how if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life? Well, that's kind of what my life is right now. I mean, I do a lot of different things. I have 5 different jobs, but I don't consider one of them a job or work. It's a lot of fun, and it opens up a lot of doors. What was your question?
Just finding that place.
Finding
you know,
that
because
place.
people can watch you, they can see you, and they can say, yes, I aspire to be like him. But how do you get to that? We're going to talk about that, because
Okay.
we're going to talk about your book. Maybe through your book
Okay.
is one way. We're going to take another short break on Outlook with Bryan Anderson. Stay with us. This special edition of Outlook continues. We're talking with Bryan Anderson, Sergeant Bryan Anderson, who goes around the country, motivates people, talks about how one person can make a difference, And in this time, you know, it's a crazy time on earth right now. A lot of people are depressed. You know, the economy's not doing so good. We got a war going on. And here you are, you lost your legs, you gave up your arm while fighting in Iraq, and you're not letting that stop you in any way, shape, or form. I was asking you, how do you get people to pay attention, to say, you don't have an excuse to be sad today. You don't have an excuse not to do what you need to do.
I guess the answer to that question is more about doing than talking. It's more, they see me doing it, and then they're like, oh, wow, okay. Well, if he can do it, maybe I can do it. And that's what I think is the biggest impact that I have on people, is the fact that the things that I'm doing are cool and fun and exciting.
Leading by example, basically.
Right, right. And that's how they teach you in the Army, is lead by example. And yeah, that's a perfect way to say it.
You know, you were talking about you are an adrenaline junkie, and you were always kind of had that edge even before the accident, but somehow that's made you have to refocus to a certain extent.
Can you elaborate?
Just no excuses. You know, now you're no holds barred.
Right. Well, I was able to see my progress, feel my progress, and then I started getting involved with things like I'm the spokesperson for Pride Mobility and Quantum Rehab, which make the wheelchairs that I'm
and you test
currently
them for them,
use,
huh?
and I test them, absolutely. And you know, now that I have my hands involved with things, I'm learning that, wow, you know, I can make a difference. I can do this. And it was really me learning that, hey, anything's possible. It's what your mind is capable of doing. Like that saying, you can do anything, it's very true. You just have to get up and do it. And I think most people are just either afraid or lazy or not sure or don't know how easy it actually is to just get up and do something.
So just get up and do it. In
Exactly.
your book is called No Turning Back. You have a foreword by Gary Sinise, Bryan Anderson with David Mack. You know, in your author's notes, I love it, because basically you're telling people how to read this book. Like, don't, you know, it's not a God thing. It's not, I don't want to change your life. I just want to share my story. And if that affects you and changes your life, great.
Right.
In the process.
Right.
But
When
it's
we
also
came
a
out with
story
this
about
book,
living.
I didn't know how people were going to react or take it or how well it was going to do. It was more or less like, hey, let's put it out there and see what happens. You know, this is what I've learned in the last 6 years. So that's what I did.
And it's about living.
It is about living, and it's about having fun, and it's about learning, and it's about, you know, realizing the world is out there and you can do anything.
Fellow Chicagoan, you have a show right now in Chicago.
Yes.
That's airing, and tell us a little more about that, and then you're hoping to take it nationally soon, 2013?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the show is called Reporting for Service with Bryan Anderson. Talk about job security, right?
I love it.
They came up to me and said, this is the title, and I'm like, you're putting my name in the title? And they're like, yeah, and I'm like,
You have arrived. Yeah.
awesome. Well, the show, it's about volunteerism, and it's about community and people making a difference. So I showcase 2 to 4 organizations or people that are making a difference in their community, making a great contribution. There's this one bike shop on the south side of Chicago that we did called Blackstone Bicycle Works. And they pull in inner city kids after school, tutor them, teach them how to work on bikes, fix and repair bikes, feed them. And if they work on a bike in the shop for more than 25 hours, they earn a free bike. And they can earn as many free bikes as they want. So it's an escape for them to get off the streets. It was like the worst neighborhood in Chicago. They always have gang violence, shootings, and all that. So I mean, it showcases organizations like that and great people. We piloted it in November in Chicago, and PBS picked it up for 13 episodes national in 2013. So at the end of this summer, we'll start filming again. But each episode will be in a different city. So I'd like to do this area.
We can make that happen. We can make that happen. So what about, you seem to be the exception to the rule. There are tens of thousands of injured veterans who come back, and their life is not as glorious as yours is right now. Are we doing enough for them?
I think so. I think it's up to the soldier to figure out what he needs to he or she needs to survive or to make them better. It's up to the individual to stand up and go and fight for themselves. There are plenty of organizations out there that are willing to help, willing to do almost anything for you. Even USA Cares is one of them. They're a great organization, and they'll help you in your time of need. They help post 9/11 vets with anything. Like if you're going to foreclose on your house, or you can't pay your car note, or whatever the case may be, you don't have enough money for food, they'll give you a gift card to Walmart or a food card.
They're there
or,
for you.
You know, they'll pay the bill. They'll be there for you.
You know, you are certainly an inspiration. You definitely are. And we're out of time on this special edition of Outlook. But we're going to continue the conversation, and you can go to our website or our Facebook page to find out more. But that's going to wrap it up for this special edition of Outlook. But the conversation continues after the credits roll.